ברוכים הבאים לכולל אהבת ישראל. Welcome to כולל אהבת ישראל. Today, Be'ezat Hashem, we're going to continue with our weekly series of in Torah. Be'ezat Hashem, as usual, we want to say thank you to our sponsors, Mr. and Mrs. Selwyn Isakov. Be'ezat Hashem, we want to say thank you to Partners in Torah. As we mentioned, Partners in Torah, Baruch Hashem, we reach about 1,500 cities around the world. Baruch Hashem, בשעה טובה, מגיע ל-1,500 ערים בכל העולם. And I want to say to all the rabbi scholars and to all of you for being with us and keeping with Torah every week, every day. Be'ezat Hashem, this will be a big merit for all of us to have refuah shlema to all the sick people of Israel, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu Be'ezat Hashem will bring this corona to its end, so we can Be'ezat Hashem resume Torah in a lot larger numbers. And Be'ezat Hashem, we want to say also refuah shlema to Baruch Chai ben Chaya Miriam and to Zehavit Batova, Flori Bat Rachel, Anat Bat Zizel, Moshe Yoav Ben Sarah, Yosef Ben Esther, יחד עם כל חולי עמך ישראל, שולמית בת ציפורה, קרן בת עליזה, ובעזרת השם, להבדיל, we also want to say in honor and memory of my father, ניסים בן פרחיה, אמי מורתי, רחל בת רוחמה, אחי, מאיר, אברהם ויעקב, and to the young mother of six that we just lost to a terror attack, Esther, Iרגון, and to the boy, Sandak, Be'ezat Hashem, Zichronam Livracha, who died in Israel a couple of days ago. And of course, to honor all the soldiers who passed and to the Holocaust and the terror attack. So, Began Eden ti nishmatam v'Hakadosh Baruch Hu yikom et damam. All right, so Parashat Vigash. We are about 2 parashot left from the book of Bereshit. Parashat Vigash is really, in essence, it's come to fruition to show that exactly the dreams of Yosef were prophecies. And it's really a cliffhanger when it comes to understanding what is really going on between Yosef and his brothers and why everything had to happen in this way and how we can relate our life to everything that's happening in the Torah. So the Torah says, Vigash elav Yehuda. Yehuda went towards him, elav. The Zohar says elav is really speaking to Hashem. El Yud Vav. First, Yehuda is coming to Hashem to ask him for help. Because the Gemara says, if you want to succeed in anything, you should always learn Mishnayot and ask Hashem to help you in any situation. Many of us come across a lot of bad situation, and we always, unfortunately, first we trust mankind and ask for favor from friends, family, whatever the case may be. But we never really ask Hashem first, So from here we see Vigash elav Yehuda, Vayomer bi Adoni idaber na'avdecha davar be'oznei Adoni, ve'al yichar be'apecha. So again, the Zohar says this is really Yehuda speaking to Hashem. They say, Hashem, I know we've done bad things. I know you're angry with us. Yehuda is the king of Israel now, and Yosef is the king of Egypt. But in essence, before Yehuda goes to Yosef, he goes to Hashem and he prays and he's asking and says, Hashem, you are with me. Kadosh Baruch Hu says, I want to reside within you. As we said at the famous verse, V'asitem li migdash v'shachanti betocham. Make me a dwelling place that I can reside within you. Within you, literally, within our bodies, within our neshama, our soul, our nefesh, our body. We have to have a mishkan for Hashem. The word mishkan comes from the word shekhinah, right? Is lishkon, to reside in. So Yehuda, before he goes to Yosef to speak into his ear, so to speak, he first goes to Hashem. As far as this time frame that we're looking at here, The year is 2230 for the Jewish count. And Yehuda is coming now after Binyamin was taken. Of course, we know Shimon was taken and returned. And the whole idea is to really bring Yaakov into Egypt. In order to have really the redemption and to receive the Torah and to be called the people of Israel, to receive the land of Israel, everything has to go through this process. So Yehuda, when it comes down, it's really the second time, as we mentioned before, Yehuda is coming to redeem Binyamin because he said, I'm Binyamin's grantor. Yosef is 39 years old. Yaakov now is 130 years old. And when we know that Yehuda is the symbol of lion, Gur Aryeh, and Yosef is shor, is an ox. So if we take the first four words, Vigash Elav Yehuda Vayomer, it's really Rashi Tevot. The acronym is Hashor. Yehuda is going towards the ox, and Yosef is the ox. We know that we say in Tehillim, Melachim Noadu, kings are gathered. The Zohar says that the angels came down to visit this event and to see how the two kings, Mashiach ben David and Mashiach ben Yosef. Yehuda, in essence, is Mashiach ben David. As we mentioned, Yehuda is the letters of Hashem, Yud Hey Vav Hey, and the letter Dalet for David, King David. And Yehuda will bring King David, Dahainu Mashiach ben David, and Yosef will bring Mashiach ben Yosef, the ox. And now we see the two kings about to fight of the principle of the succession and the redemption of Israel. Of course, Yehuda doesn't know that this is Yosef. And he says to him, in his ears, he says, Ki kamocha keparon. So we know when a person comes to whisper in somebody's ear, they don't really want to insult them in front of everybody. The idea to come and whisper in somebody's ear, the word ear, ozen. Ozen comes from the word leha'azin, to carefully listen and to understand when a person trying to come to you quietly is because they want to avoid what's next. When a person comes to you, to your ear, la'azin, by the way, this is where the entire balance of the body hidden in the ozen, this is the equilibrium. When you have ozen is ma'azan, is like the right perfect balance. If your ears, if what you hear is good and what other people hear from you is good, then you have the perfect balance. You don't lose your so-called equilibrium. And we know that, medically, many people will tell you if they have problems with losing balance, is usually have some sort of infection in the ear, whatever the case may be. Yehuda is coming to Yosef and he says to him in his ear, you're just like Pharaoh. Yehuda, basically, the Gemara says, he had a whole notion of how to defeat the king of Egypt. Again, he's not knowing that is Yosef yet. And Yosef, as we remember, when he was doing the trickery with his brothers, he was listening at the so-called goblet. He would put this half gold and half silver goblet, the Gemara says, in his ear. And he will pretend like the goblet telling him some secrets and stories. And he will tell the brothers. He will tell them things that they only know. And they're like, oh my God, this goblet. And that's the essence why Yosef used the goblet with Binyamin. But we'll get to it in a minute. But he says to him, you're just like Pharaoh. What Yehuda was saying to the king of Egypt, to Pa'anach, Tzofnat Pa'anach, which is Yosef, he says to him, you're just like Pharaoh. You told us, Yehuda says, in last parasha, in Parashat Miketz, as we know, Pharaoh says, Yosef, as the Pharaoh, he says to his brothers, the children of Yaakov, I believe in your God. And they even eat together without the Goyim, without the Egyptian. And Yehuda says, if you believe in our God, how can he do things like Pharaoh? Because Pharaoh, when he kidnapped Sarah, he had her for 36 days. And as we know, Hashem hit him with 6 plagues out of the 10 plagues. Every plague, it took him a week. And in essence, 6 days. And it says that, this 36 days were such a horrific days for Pharaoh. 6 out of the 10 plagues that will come in the future in Egypt came to Pharaoh and his household and his servant when Sarah was with him. Because, we know the story with Abraham and Sarah coming down. After 36 days, he released her and he gave her a lot of fortune. He gave her the land of Goshen, which is, by the way, the land of Goshen is the delta in Egypt. Delta, it's come from the word Aramaic. From delta means the triangle. And the triangle of the delta is about 240 square kilometers. This is the best, most fertile land of Egypt. And it's actually was already given to the people of Israel, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the book of Bereshit says, this is the land of Israel. And the borders will be the 4 rivers. And one of them is Egypt, the Nile, the Nilus. And he walked, by the way, after the 36 days that he gave Abraham and Sarah a lot of fortune, a lot of gold, a lot of cattle, and even his daughter Hagar, he said, I'd rather you be with the Hebrews than here, a queen in Egypt. In essence, he understood what the Jewish people are all about and what's the Hebrew all about. And he walked them out of the land of Egypt 4 amot, 4 steps. So, there's halacha in the Shulchan Aruch, if somebody comes to visit your home, is a mitzvah to walk them out of your private residence, private even property, let's say from the opening of the house to the street, 4 steps into the street. This we learn from Pharaoh. And Yehuda says to him, you're just like Pharaoh. You're kidnapping. You don't know what's about to happen to you. You're taking the son of Yaakov, the son of, our father. And Yehuda says to him, Adoni, sha'al et avdecha lemora, yesh lachem av or ach, I'm sorry. You ask us if we have a father and a brother. Yehuda saying something that Yosef never asked. As remember, the brothers start divulging a lot of the information to Yosef with the first time around when Shimon was kept behind. The reason Shimon was kept behind by Yosef, because Shimon was the one to push Yosef into the pit when the brothers wanted to kill him, and then Reuven saved him. And of course, we see that Shimon דחף את יוסף אל תוך החור, לכן יוסף שמר אותו בכלא 3 ימים. We see that after Shimon, of course, he does the trick with Binyamin and the goblet. The Zohar Kadosh explains something amazing. We know that the brothers, when they about to kill Yosef, there were actually 10 of them, right? And then Reuven said, don't kill him. Let's put him in the pit. And he left. Reuven had to go and serve his father, Yaakov. The 12 brothers, by the way, every day different brothers served Yaakov. So now there is 9 remained. Binyamin was not with them. Yosef was not, Reuven was not there. There were 9. And in order to do such thing, they had to have minyan. They have to have 10 people. So the Zohar Kadosh says that they ask She'elat Shamayim, they ask if this is something they can do, and the Shekhinah joined them to be the 10th. The holiness, the Shekhinah, joined the brothers in the whole ordeal of the sale of Yosef. Now, when Yosef hit the goblet, this gavia, batik shel Binyamin, al hamor shel Binyamin, Yosef, in essence, did the same thing to see if there is a heter mishamayim. The Gemara says in Masechet Ta'anit, היה רב אחד בשם רבי יוסף, שהיה מאוד 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 עסוק בתורה, 100% מן הזמן. והפרנסה שלו היה לו חמור. There's a story in the Gemara in Masechet Ta'anit, in Tractate Ta'anit, that there was a rabbi named Rabbi Yosef, and he was always studying Torah, and the way he made money, he had a donkey, and because this rabbi was so kadosh, such a holy, the donkey became very much as holy as the rabbi as far as integrity. And the rabbi would say, you want to take the donkey, go ahead, and just, when you're done, put, whatever the money that you think you should pay, put it on the donkey, and then he'll bring it home. And if you bring in too much, he would not move, and if you bring in too little, he would not move. So make sure you do the right thing. Really, it's an amazing, amazing essence of trust. The same thing happened with the camels of Avraham Avinu. When Eliezer went to get the shidduch for Yitzchak, he took 10 camels from Avraham, and this camel would not eat until the idols were removed from the house of Betuel and Lavan. So Yosef, the Zohar says, Yosef, when he was about to put the goblet, the gavia, Be'amtachtat Binyamin al Chamoro, he said like this. He said, if this is okay by the heavens, the donkey will go. He will be like this donkey that would, if it was not right, he would not move. And if the donkey goes and he moves, that means Hashem wants me to do this. And that's exactly what happened. Now Binyamin says, we have Av Zaken, we have the old father, and he has a little boy, Ben Zekunim. He's talking about Binyamin. Ve'echav met, and his brother died. ויוותרהו לבדו לאמו ולאביו ואביו אהבו. So, it says, again, Yehuda is divulging a lot of information that Yosef never asked. But he says that Yosef died. And remember, he doesn't know that Yosef is talking to him now. And Yosef, first more, Yehuda says to him, the Zohar says, how can you take Binyamin? Binyamin was not even part of this whole cell of Yosef. Why? He said, you say you believe in our God. In Parashat Miketz, Yosef says, Elohechem, ani ma'amin be'Elohechem. And he says to him, if you believe in God, why do you want to take a thief to be your slave? Ganav, the halacha says if somebody stole from you 100, he pays double, that's it, 200. So let us pay and leave. Why do you want to keep Binyamin? Why do you want to make him your slave? You want a thief for a slave? The Midrash Tanchuma says that the brothers actually were hitting Binyamin and saying to him, how can you be a thief like your mother? Because Rachel, as we know, she stole the terafim, she stole the idols from her father, Lavan, in essence to make him tshuva, really, not to steal from him. And Yaakov did not know, and he said, whoever stole should die. So Yehuda says to Yosef, our father can curse you. Why do you want to keep Binyamin? He accidentally said whoever stole should die, and now if you'll do it with kavanah, you shall die if you steal his son. He's the only son he has left. In essence, Yehuda says, we don't count, none of us. The other 10 brothers, we don't count. Only Binyamin really count now that Yosef is dead. We'll get to it in a minute, but when Yehuda was claiming all this, Yosef was saying, how can you guys speak so much about this boy and his father's not going to live, he's not coming back? And he goes and he listened to the goblet and he says, the goblet tells me that, I see that your father is alive. How come he didn't die? When Yosef passed away, when Yosef was gone, how can you say the same thing about Binyamin? Now, in essence, the whole process of Yosef, what he's doing to his brother is really, the Zohar says, to bring them to a place where they can do a full tshuva. They say in order to do a full tshuva, you have to be at the same situation and not to do the same sin. So, the taking of Binyamin is to really bring the brothers to the place where they were with Yosef. Because, Yosef begged them nothing. They had no remorse. They sold him. They tried to kill him originally. They couldn't. They sold him. They threw him in the pit, hoping that he'll die in the pit. Then when he was sold to the Ishmaelites and Midianites, and the brothers sat down to eat and all that, they never, ever apologized. Remember in last parasha, when the brother came to Egypt the first time, Yosef amar lahem, meraglim atem, you are spies. In essence, what Yosef was saying, he was punishing the brothers. He says, you'll be the spies, after 227 years from now. The people of Israel, as we know, will be for 210 years in Egypt, and then they'll come out, right? Yosef right now is 39, and he will be 17 years with his father. Yaakov would come down to Egypt when he's 130, and he would live with Yosef another 17 years. And he will pass when he's 147. And as we know, Yosef then will die when he's 110, and the 210 years will come, and then the 10 brothers will be the spies in the desert and die. In essence, he said to them, Meraglim atem, you will be the spies. And later on, when he cries with them, Alehem, the Torah says he cries on them, meaning he cried for what's about to happen to them in the future. We'll get to it in a minute, but really, in essence, what Yosef, when he said Meraglim atem, he said that several times, alluding to all their Gilgul Nefashot of what's going to happen with them in the future. So we know when the word Vigash, by the way, is an acronym, V'ata yagia gilui shechina. And now we'll see the holiness intervene. Every time that Yosef was talking to Yehuda, he's trying to bring Yehuda and his brothers to the place where they are really at the place of asking for tshuva and receiving the tshuva from Hashem. But we'll learn in the future that really the 10 brothers never really made tshuva. We know that in the beginning, when they said to Yaakov, Tarof Toraf Yosef, when they sent the clothing, the garment, Kotonet Apasim, when they sent it to Yaakov, they never went. They sent it with somebody. And only then they said Tarof Toraf Yosef. And later on, when Yaakov will pass, and Yosef, of course, now maybe take revenge, the brother do not go to him and ask for forgiveness of what happened. They send Bilhah to their mother. In essence, they never ever really ask for forgiveness. And that's why they are keep paying with their nefashot all the way to Aseret Harugei Malchut, the 10 righteous that will die by the hand of Adrianus, the Roman Caesar. We'll get to it afterwards. So we know that Yehuda is basically going throughout the process of what happened, describing to Yosef. And he says, והיה כראות כי אין הנער ומת והורידו עבדך את שיבת אביך אבינו ביגון שאולה. He says, if we don't bring Binyamin, our father will die. And as I mentioned before, Yosef said to him, how can you tell me that your father will die? How come he didn't die when Yosef died? Then Yosef, he loved more than Binyamin. We know that Yosef was what it's called מחוות העיניים של יעקב. When Yaakov saw Rachel, that's the one he wanted to marry, not Leah. So for him, in essence, Yosef was the Bechor. And Binyamin, when he was born, he actually really brought such sadness to Yaakov because Rachel died on the birth of Binyamin. Rachel called Binyamin Ben Oni, the son of my sorrow. And Yaakov changed his name to Binyamin. And we know that Yaakov loved Yosef even more than Binyamin. Vayahav Yaakov et Yosef mikol echav. He loved Yosef more than all his brothers. So when Yehuda says, if you take Binyamin, our father will die, Yosef was basically saying, how you would say that my father will die? How can he say such thing? He loved Yosef. According to my goblet, according to this tool that I use, that Yosef, as you said, died, but your father still was alive for 22 years. As Yehuda says something that in essence is really about us going up to heaven, to our judgment day. He says, Ki ech e'ele el avi ve'anar einenu iti. Meaning that, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us this neshama, when we come to this world, we cannot come up to Hashem and say the neshama is not with us. We destroyed it. It's not a good neshama. Everything you gave us, we did a lot of sins. How can we go up ve'anar eino itan? In essence, it says also, the Ben Ish Chai says, always, when parents go, they always make sure that the children are children of God. They cannot come to this world and have children that are not children of God. Our children are not with us. The essence of all parents is to have the children be better than them. More Torah, more righteousness. That's the beauty of the generations. We start with Avraham. Avraham Avinu, did not have the merit to come out of the fire, the furnace of Nimrod. And then the angel Gabriel and Michael and Raphael said to Hashem, on behalf of Yaakov and his children, Abraham will merit to be saved. That's why it says, Yaakov podeh Abraham. You know, for our children, they could do better than us and help us. We know that, for an example, we just passed Hanukkah. Yochanan Kohen Gadol became a tzdoki. He left Hashem. And his children were able to bring him back to heaven from hell. In essence, really, Avraham Avinu did the same thing for TORAH. When TORAH was what we call number one idolatry maker, when Avraham is about to die at 175, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to him, you'll be buried with your father in heaven. And Avraham says, TORAH in heaven? How? You know my father. Says, yeah, but your mitzvah brought him back. So the children are able to redeem us. And that's why when Yehuda says, Ech e'eleh el avi, how can I go up to my father, Hashem, ve'hanar eno iti, and my boys are now with me, meaning our children, our neshamot, that we brought to this world are now with us. Every father's responsibility and mother is to really bring the children to a place where they're heavenly awarded. Because, you know, the Zohar says our children is gift from Hashem to see what we're going to do with them. You know, Rabbi Meir Baal HaNes, he had 2 children. And the children died on Shabbat when he was in shul. And his wife, Bruria, hid them all Shabbat. And Rabbi Meir Baal HaNes is asking, where is the children? And Bruria, his wife, which was so righteous, asked him, says, let me ask you a question, Rabbi. If I come to you and I give you a very, very expensive treasure to hold for me, and I will ask it whenever I want in the future, would you give it back to me whenever I ask, or would you hold on to it? Rabbi Meir Baal HaNes says, of course I'll give it to you. It's not mine. It's yours. I'll hold it for you, and when you want it, you can take it. Motzei Shabbat, she revealed to him that his children died. She says, Rabbi, you just agreed with me that this is a pikadon, this is a treasure that Hashem gave us, and he took it whenever he was ready to take it back. In essence, our children is really not our children. They are a gift from Hashem to see what we're going to do with them. If we succeed, then hanar itanu. If we're not, hanar eno itanu. Chas v'chalila. Yosef was doing this whole thing in order to bring the 10 brothers to a place where they could really have a tshuva at the highest level. But the brothers actually failed to do tshuva. So we know after all said and done, Yosef כתוב, ולא יכול יוסף להתאפק לכל הניצבים עליו, ויקרא הוציאו כל איש מעלי, ולא עמד איש איתו בדוודא יוסף אל אחד. So the Zohar Kadosh says something amazing. You know, the word ish is actually speaking of an angel. You know, when Yosef was going to his brothers, and when he was let go after his father walked him to Emek Hebron, and he walked by himself, and come the angel Gabriel named Ha'ish, and he says to him, you lost, what are you looking for? המלאך אומר ליוסף, אתה טועה, מה אתה מחפש? הוא אומר, את אחי אני דורש. I'm asking for my brothers. And the angel says to him, הלכו מזה. המלאך גבריאל says to Yosef, they don't want you to be part of them anymore. הלכו מזה, זה in numerical code is 12. There, you are not part of the 12 tribes anymore. They left you. ולא יכלו עוד דברו לשלום. Meaning that they didn't even able to look at him and to say even shalom. That's how bad they hated Yosef. And Ha'ish, this is none other than Gabriel. And in Parashat Miketz, when Yaakov says to his brother, Redu Shama, V'dabru el ha'ish. He says, Redu Shama. Redu in Gematria is 210, alluding to the 210 years in Egypt. And Shama is the letters Moshe. Moshe will bring you back after 210 years. But it says, Daber el ha'ish. Ask the angel Gabriel to help you. And that's why Hashem says, Mitzrayma. Vayered Yaakov Mitzrayma. Hey, added to the word Mitzrayim, that Hashem, the angels came with him. That's why when HaKadosh Baruch Hu left Egypt, Vayotzit Kol Tzvaot, Hashem, after Makat Bechorot, he came out of Egypt with all Tzvaot Hashem, with all the angels. And of course, we know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu promised Avraham in Brit Ben Abetarim 400 years of slavery. The question is asked, why Avraham never asked Hashem not to, maybe less, half? Why Avraham never said it's okay 400? Never fought it. מדוע אברהם אבינו בברית בין הבתרים לא ביקש מהשם להוריד את 400 שנה, כמו שהוא עשה עם סדום ועמורה? Like in Sodom and Gomorrah, when Hashem says, I'm about to destroy five cities of non-Jews, Abraham says, let me save them if they have minyan in each city. If there is 5 minyanim, 50 people. He tried until one lot. And of course, when it comes to Brit Ben Abtarim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu promised him 400. So, the Gemara says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu punished Avraham for 2 things. Avraham Avinu says, Bameh eda ki arishena. He was doubting Hashem's promise. How do I know I'm going to receive the land of Israel? How will I know I receive my people, the children of Israel? Bameh eda ki arishena. For each word he was punished with 100 years slavery. And Avraham did not argue for one reason. When Avraham discovered Hashem and he became Hebrew, Ivri, he made a lot of people come join the people of Israel. A lot of people. V'kol hanefesh asher asa becharan. He and Sarah converted a lot of people. And throughout Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, because, they are the 3 avot that defeated the world. Avraham Nitzeach Tesha Melachim. The first world war was Avraham. When Avraham went to save Lot, there was a war between 9 countries, and Avraham defeated them all. And then, of course, we know Yitzchak defeat Avimelech and the Akedah. And Yaakov defeat Esav and Lavan. And the angel, Samael. So everybody saw how great these people of Israel, they joined them, not for the sake of being Hebrew or being Jewish later on. They just joined because they said they're the powerful people. Let us go with them. And when the people of Israel, 400 years from the birth of Yitzchak was born on what we call Tu Ben Nisan, Pesach Tedvav Ben Nisan, 2048. And 400 later, 400 exactly as Hashem promised, the people of Israel will come out from Egypt on Pesach, Tedvav Ben Nisan, 2448, 2448, exactly 400 years from the birth of Yitzchak, and only 20% came out. Chamushim Yatsu, meaning 80% were not really Hebrew. 80% did not believe in Hashem. 80% were Goyim that joined just for the sake of joining the people of Israel. Like what happened today in Israel. In Israel today, you have over 2 million Israelis, so to call, not Jewish. Not to mention the Arabs. Forget the Arabs, that almost 2 million as well. There is, just from Russia, over 600,000 people came that was not Jewish. There is many, many, many people in Israel that are not Jewish. That's why we have all the chaos in Israel. Erev Rav. You have more than half of the government is אספסוף. הממשלה של ישראל יותר מחצי זה לא יהודים בכלל. ערבים, אספסוף, שמאלנים, אין להם אלוהים. They have no God of Israel in them. So in essence, that's why Abraham never really fought. He says, listen, it's like a surgery, right? If Chaz v'Chalila, I come to you, I say, listen, I have to take your son. Has a lot of problems. I have to open up, do a surgery, remove a lot of bad parts. But at the end, I bring him to you healthy and clean and good. Would you fight it? No. It's exactly what Abraham saw. That's why he never really debated. And when Yosef now is about to reveal himself to his brothers, he asked all the Egyptians to leave, and he even asked the angel Gabriel to leave. Because he says, this has to be just between us. I want to see if they're really, really, really accepting the path of tshuva, even though they haven't done it yet. And he says, הוציאו כל איש מעליו ולא עמד איש איתו, even the angel Gabriel that was saving Yosef all the time. By the way, the angel Gabriel was with Yosef when he came out of jail after 12 years. That was Erev Rosh Hashanah. And כתוב, עדות ביהוסף שמו, בצאתו על ארץ מצרים. The angel Gabriel added the letter Hey to Yosef. He became Yehosef. And he spoke 70 languages in one night. How? You know, every time HaKadosh Baruch Hu writes something in the Torah is a code message for us. For an example, in the book of Bereshit, in the 6th day of creation, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Behi Bar'am. Behi Bar'am, meaning that the whole world was created just with the letter Hey. Hey. That's why Hashem added the letter Hey to Avraham. Behi Bar'am is Avraham. And to Sarai, Sarah. Yosef, Yehosef. Yonatan, Yehonatan. Hoshea, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yosef lo Yud. Yehoshua. The letters of God, especially the Hey, is the entire secrets of the world. We have a dear friend, Moshe ben Marcel, Refuah Shlema Be'ezat Hashem. I'll say it in Hebrew, then I'll say it in English. Baruch Hashem, we have a small group of volunteers here that we help patients that come from Israel. באים ברוך השם מספר חולים מהארץ להשתלות, שיבדלו לחיים ארוכים ורפואה שלמה. אחד מהם זה משה בן מרסל, בחור טוב, שקיבל השתלת ריאה. תכף אחרי ההשתלה, הוא מדבר רק אנגלית, והוא לא יודע בכלל אנגלית. האחיות, הרופאים מדברים אותו, והוא עונה להם רק באנגלית. וזה בן אדם שבחיים שלו לא דיבר אנגלית. העדות ביהוסף שמו. הרי עד מגדל בבל כל העולם דיבר עברית. רק כשעשו את מגדל בבל, הקדוש ברוך הוא בלבל את השפה, והוסיף 70 שפות לעולם. בגלל זה כזה 70 נגד העמים. הכל פה, כל השפות הם בראש, בא מלאך מגלה לנו את כל השפות, בתוך לילה אחד אנחנו יכולים ללמוד 70 שפות. You know, I told the story of a patient that came here. His name is Moshe. God bless him and all the other patients that are here for transplant. After he got a lung transplant, when he woke up from the surgery, all he spoke was English. He never spoke English in his life. The doctors and the nurses speak to him, and he answers to them in complete English, full English, speaking like he knows English. But he never in his life spoke English. That's what Yosef. He knew all the languages because they're here. And one thing can trigger and show you how Hashem works. Yosef, Sefat lo yadati eshma. He says, I heard all these languages. That's, by the way, when Pharaoh lied to Yosef, he says, I was on Sfat HaYeor. Yosef, Hashem says to him, no, he's lying. Tell him he was on the Yeor, not on Sfat HaYeor. That's when Pharaoh knew that Yosef speaking the truth of Hashem. And that's why he says, Avrech, ish navon v'chacham, ish Elohim. Even Pharaoh understood that Elohim was with Yosef. How can we not be with Elohim? So let's continue. Now, it says that Yosef was showing that he's their brother. You know, when Yosef, the Gemara says that when Yosef was about to reveal himself, he says to them, let me call Yosef. He goes, Yosef, Yosef. He calls. The brothers looking around, they're in fear. And he says that when he called upon Yosef and got to know Vaytvada Yosef Elechav, He said that they could not believe, and they were so afraid that even Yosef had to show them the circumcision. You know, Yosef was born circumcised, just like his father Yaakov. Yosef and Yaakov had 24 common things. By the way, 24 is the gifts of Kehuna, is also 24 gifts you have to give your wife. When you marry her in the first year, you have to give her 24 gifts. Because you know, the parnasa comes from the wife. The essence of Yosef getting to reveal himself to his brother, he says to them, I am your brother, and he cries so loud that the Egyptian, the whole house of Egypt heard. Vayishma'u Mitzrayim, Vayishma Bet Paro. What's Vayishma Bet Paro? They said, they heard that Yosef is their brother. And now they understood when Pharaoh says he's not really a slave. He can be the king of Egypt. And they heard and they were very happy. They said, wow, look, we had one brother, Yosef. Look what he did for us. We are the richest country in the world. Can you imagine if we have another 12, these 11 brothers and their father? Amazing. Times, 12, the whole wealth times 12. So we see here that Yosef cried. Ani Yosef, Aod Avinu Chai. When Yosef says to his brother, Ani Yosef, meaning, I want you to know, I am the same Yosef that you sold me 17 when I was 17. I never change. I'm the same Yosef, same, Torah, same father, same learning. I never left Hashem. Even I became the king of Egypt. And even when I was in jail for 12 years. Every time the Torah mentioned Yosef in jail, it says, Nar Ivri. He's a Hebrew. He never left Hashem. And he says, the Torah says, Aod Avi Chai. This is the rebuke Yosef was saying. You told me that my father would die if I give you Binyamin. But look, our father is still alive without me and without Binyamin. In essence, the brother says the Torah here, Velo yachlu echav la'anot oto ki nivhalu mipanav. The brother, the Zohar says, they literally died. The neshama left them that moment, and Yosef brought them back to life. And when he did that, they could not even look him in the face. Meaning they saw the face of Yaakov. When Yosef left them, he was 17, and now he's a king, he has a beard. He's covered with all the jewelry of Egyptian king. And when he revealed himself, they could not look at him. They saw the face as Yaakov. In essence, they were terrified now that Yosef will tell Yaakov what the brothers did. And Yaakov will curse them and they will all die again. But of course, we know Yosef, Vayomer Yosef elechav geshu na elai vaigashu. Vayomer ani Yosef achichem asher mechartem oti Mitzrayim. We have a duplicate here, geshu elai vaigashu. Yosef says, come to me, and they came. Whenever you have an extra word in the Torah, it's not really an extra word. There's no such thing. It's a secret. Vaigashu is really vaishgu. Yosef is showing them how they made a mistake. Yosef was saying, listen, the dreams that I have is not my dreams. Hashem wants me to have the dream to tell you. So in essence now, Yosef is preparing them for the redemption that will begin with exile. And he says, our mistakes is why we are here. But it will be good, because after all said and done, me'az yatsa matok. He says to them, I'm the same Yosef. And Be'ezat Hashem, he says, Ki mechartem oti, ki hine lemichya shelachani Elohim lefechem. He says, even though you meant bad, but it's all good. You meant to do bad, and look what Hashem did. He made me the king so I can support you and the people of Israel. At that moment, there is 66 nefashot in Israel and 4 in Egypt. Yaakov, as we know, had his children, and every son had a twin daughter. And from them, the kids that were about to come, there's 66 of them, and Yosef was not Ephraim and Menashe, even though Menashe was, by the way, the Bechor. As we'll know, Yaakov made Ephraim the Bechor. Why? He saw that Ephraim is more righteous than Menashe in the future. Menashe will bring an idol into the Bet HaMikdash in the future, into the Mishkan. So we know here that altogether will be 70 nefesh. Those 70 nefesh will be against the 70 nation. In Parashat Noach, chapter 10, you'll see after the Tower of Babel, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought to the world 70 languages and he spread them all over the world, those are the 70 nation against the 70 nefesh of the Jewish people. That started from 70 and millions will come out of Egypt. And of course, Yosef says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu sent me lifnechem. And now this is the second year, this 2 years of famine, and Yaakov is about to be brought down to Egypt. In essence, the dream of Yosef, when 11 brothers and their father and mother bow, and it's Yaakov and Bilhah and the 11 brothers. By the way, Binyamin was the only tzabar. Binyamin was the only one that was born in the land of Israel. All the other brothers and Dinah were born at the house of Lavan. Lavan, by the way, is the Saba of Bnei Israel. Lavan lived over 500 years. By the way, maybe you know, maybe you don't, but the person that lived the longest in the history of the world, הבן אדם שחי הכי הרבה שנים בהיסטוריה, was Cain. Cain, as you remember, he murdered Hevel. And he did a tshuva. And he died by Lemech, the father of Noach, almost 1,500 years from Bereshit. He lived about 1,500 years. Cain lived the longest in the history of the world. After him, we know that there was a king named Yoram Melech Tzor. Yoram Melech Tzor lived 1,100 years. By the way, Yoram is the friend of Yehuda. When Yehuda went down to the Ira Adolumi, that was Ira, the king of of Lebanon in the future, and he helped Shlomo build the temple. He sent him Arazim. That's why the flag of Lebanon has the tree of Erez, right? That he sent to Shlomo Melech to help him build. He lived almost one of the 10 people that went up to the heaven alive. It says he was actually thrown out of heaven and then died because he was too ga'aftan. He was very, very haughty, in English, ga'aftan. But in essence, you see that even though HaKadosh Baruch Hu says you live only 120 years, and you have some righteous people that did tshuva, Cain killed Hevel, is the first murder in the world, and Hashem was able to forgive him. We know that's how Hashem is willing to forgive almost everything, even murder. We learn from Cain, he did tshuva. Lo yachol nesot avoni. Cain says, I cannot carry this anymore, and he did tshuva. HaKadosh Baruch Hu never closed sha'arei tshuva. There's always place for tshuva. And by the way, many people don't know that Shabbat is actually punishable more than murder. Shabbat, as we know, is the fourth Imra b'Torah shel Aseret HaDibrot. It's the fourth in the 10 Commandments. Lo tirtzach is not. It's the sixth, right? Meaning that, even for murder, is not as bad as Chilul Shabbat. Chilul Shabbat is karet. The Zohar Kadosh says there are 36 karetot. What's karet? Karet is the letter keter. Whoever destroyed the keter of Hashem, chaz v'chalila, is obligating themselves in karet. Shabbat is the most important thing. Baruch Hashem, I see many people keep Shabbat now. Even in my family, it's amazing, amazing, beautiful thing. May you continue, Be'ezat Hashem, tamshichu lishmor Shabbat. And now we know that Yaakov is now instructed, so to speak, by Yosef to come down to Egypt. You know, Yosef says, Ma'aru ve'alu el avi ve'amartem elav, ko amar bincha Yosef, sameni Elohim le'adon lechol Mitzrayim, reda elai al ta'amod. You know, Yosef is basically now summoning his father. The question is asked, how does Yosef has the chutzpah to say to Yaakov, to the brother, go bring Yaakov to me? But really, it's not a chutzpah. Yosef says, Hashem shalachani lifnechem. The reason I'm here is for you, not for me. And Yaakov, when he said to you, Redu Shama, he knew about this. When Yaakov, as we know in Parashat Vayeshev Yaakov be'eretz megurei aviv be'eretz Canaan, Rashi says that the anger of Yosef jumped on Yaakov. Right? Yosef, Rogez Yosef kafatz al Yaakov. Rogez, the word Rogez in Hebrew without Vav is 210. Yaakov wanted to cancel the 210 years. He says, I want to stay in the land of Israel. Hashem says, no, it's not the time. How can you do that? Yosef has not become the king yet. The people of Israel did not go to Egypt. Only after Egypt and receiving the Torah, the people of Israel will become the people of Israel. They will live in the land of Israel. And Yosef says, because of that, Hashem says, Ko Amar. Ko, by the way, is Shechina, Kaf Hei. You know, that's why we have the Shechina reside on the Maccabim on Kaf Hei. Chanukah. What's Chanukah? Chanu Kaf Hei. Vechen Kaf Hei. Hashem came and allowed the miracle of Chanukah to happen on Kaf Hei. Kaf Hei be Kislev. Why Kaf Hei be Kislev? Because, you know, when the people of Israel came out of Egypt on the second year, they started building the Mishkan. We know that Moshe was instructed to collect, and Betzalel and Oholiav, 13-year-old kids, build the Mishkan. And when they started the Mishkan, that was in Chol HaMoed Sukkot, and they finished it on Kaf Hei Be Kislev, Chanukah. That's why the Yehuda Maccabi, this Yehuda here is the Gulgul of Yehuda Maccabi, will find the oil that Yaakov left them, Achim Ketanim, in order to secure the miracle of Chanukah. So Yosef says, Ko Amar Bincha Yosef, meaning that, you know, Father, I want you to know I'm still your son. Even though I'm the king of Egypt, he put the king of Egypt second. First I'm Yosef. Samani Elohim le'adon lechol Mitzrayim. This is what Hashem wanted. You know, you're a prophet. You know that Yaakov lost his prophecy for 22 years. Yaakov לא יכל להתנבא 22 שנה. כנגד 22 שנה שהוא לא ראה את יוסף. You know, Yosef was a king. Yaakov did not see him for 22 years. Just like the same amount of year, Yaakov did not do mitzvat kibud avahem 22 years. He was 20 years with Lavan and 2 years traveling. The first 14 years was in Shem and Ever. That's what his parents told him to do. But, you know, in essence, Yaakov, when he married, he should have come back, but he stayed with Lavan. And for that, he would lose the same amount of years being with Yosef. And of course, Yosef says, I'm here to really feed you all and take care of you and everything that you need. And this is like the first 2 years of the famine. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu now will postpone the next 5 years of the famine. Kisham, as he says, Ki od 5 shanim ra'av. There'll be 5 more years, but not now. V'ineh enechem ro'ot ve'eneh achi Binyamin kefi hamedaber elechem. You know, Binyamin, by the way, just so you know, when Yosef kept Binyamin behind, Yosef revealed to Binyamin that he is his brother. And as we know, Binyamin loved Yosef so much. He had 10 children that he named all his children after Yosef. Binyamin's children were Bela, Bechor, Ashbel, Gera, Naaman, Achi, Rosh, Mofim, Chofim, Arad. Each name that Binyamin gave his children was attribute to Yosef. And as we know, when Yosef kept Binyamin, he really told him, I'm your brother. And Binyamin kept the secret. You know, the Zohar Kadosh says that the word Bereshit has the entire mitzvot of the Torah, but it also had many, many acronym of things to come. For an example, there were 6 heroes, tzaddikim, that kept a secret to save the people of Israel. The word Bereshit is Binyamin, Rachel, Esther, Shaul, Yosef, Tamar. Binyamin did not tell his brother that I know this is Yosef, because he did not want Chaz v'Chalila to have them terrified and perhaps maybe go to war. Rachel, as we know, kept the secret, even though Yaakov told her, listen, I'm going to give you 3 signs to verify that you're going to marry me and not Leah, because I know your father. Lavan is a naval. And he told her the word china. China is the what we call chala, nida, hadlakat nerot. And Rachel gave those secrets to Leah so she can marry Yaakov. Esther was with Ahasuerus for 6 years and never revealed to him that she's Jewish. 6 years. In order not to destroy the people of Israel. Shaul, as we know, his father sent him to find his atonot, his mules. Shaul became the king. Shmuel Hanavi, Shmuel the prophet anointed Shaul to be the king. And Shaul, when he came home, he never told his father. He didn't want to hurt his feeling. And of course, Yosef, you know, he was a king for 9 years. And he never told Yaakov, come, I'm a king now. 9 years he waited, until 39 years old. From 30 to 39. Why? He did not want Yaakov to curse the brothers. Or Chaz v'Chalila bring curse on the people of Israel. And of course, Tamar is the Kala of Yehuda. And Tamar did what she did in order to really bring Mashiach, Ben David. From her and Yehuda, David will come. How will come? Through Boaz and Ruth. And that's Boaz came from Yehuda, is a reincarnation of Yehuda. And only because that Tamar, when Yehuda said, Tzadka mimeni, she kept a secret. She did not say who was the father. She just said whoever those things belong to, he knows. That's why Yehuda said, Tzadka mimeni. So now, Yosef says, ומיהרתם והורתם את אבי הנה, ויפול על צווארי בנימין אחיו, ויבק בנימין בכה על צוואריו. So you know, we see here that Yosef cries on צוואריו של בנימין, 2 necks. You know, we have one tzavar, all right? By the way, tzavar is the one part that connects between the physical and the spiritual. We have our body below and our head above. And tzavarav shel Binyamin, 2 Beit HaMikdash. Yosef cried for the 2 destructions. And Binyamin cried on tzavar Yosef. 1 tzavar is the Mishkan Shiloh. Of course, we know that in essence, when Yosef, he says, Vaishak lekol echa vaivak alehem, who cried for them. Alehem is an acronym. Atidim lihiyot haruge malchut. Yosef saw the future of their Gilgulei Neshamot. And as we know, there is a Caesar, a Caesar Adrianus Lupinius, that learned Torah. And he learned Parashat Mishpatim. He learned the whole Torah. When the Torah was converted to other languages, we know that he started learning Torah. And he says he gathered 10 tzaddikim. He went to Rabbi Akiva and 9 other tzaddikim. He says, listen, I want to ask you a question. Do you believe in your Torah? And they say, of course. This is Torah from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Torah Moshe. He says to them in Parashat Mishpatim, he says, Ma onsho lemí sheganav nefesh. He says, what's the punishment if somebody sell their brother. They steal their soul. Because the sell of Yosef is gneva. Lo tignov, it speaks of people, not just items. So Rabbi Akiva understood something is about to happen here. And he said, the Torah says, if you chaz v'chalila steal a soul, chayav mita, you have to die. So the 10 tzaddikim, which were, by the way, I'll read their name, Rabbi Ishmael Kohen Gadol, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, which was the father of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Hanania Betardion, Rabbi Chutzpit HaMeturgaman. By the way, Rabbi Chutzpit HaMeturgaman, until that moment, nobody wrote the Gemara. There was Torah Shebe'al Peh. Chutzpit HaMeturgaman, he's the one that started writing the Gemara in order not to forget it, because he saw what's about to happen. And of course, Yehuda Nasi later on will gather the Mishnayot and write it. And then we have Rabbi Elazar ben Shamua, Rabbi Hanania ben Chachnai, Rabbi Yeshevav HaSofer, Rabbi Yehuda ben Dama, and Rabbi Yehuda ben Baba. Those 10 tzaddikim got together and they sent the biggest tzaddik among them, which was Rabbi Ishmael Kohen Gadol. Rabbi Ishmael Kohen Gadol is literally left his body, his neshama went to the heaven and asked, is this true? Is this something that we have to accept? And Shekhinah said yes. The Zohar Kadosh says, those 10 brothers is really, Rabbi Akiva represent the Shekhinah, and the 10 brothers that are about to die again as Harugei Malchut accepted the decree from Shamayim. And each one of them died according to what they said to Yosef, or what they thought about Yosef. They died in a horrific, horrific death. As we know, Adrianus killed them in a way that just each one worse than the other. For example, Rabbi Akiva was taken to jail on Aleph Be'elul for the 40 days of Slichot, and he was murdered with combing his skin with metal combs on Yom Kippur. And Rabbi Tardion was in fire. And by the way, when Rabbi Ishmael Kohen Gadol went up to the heaven, the Gemara will tell us in Masechet Brachot something amazing. HaKadosh Baruch Hu saw Rabbi Ishmael Kohen Gadol and he asked me, Barech oti beni. HaKadosh Baruch Hu asked Rabbi Ishmael to bless him. HaKadosh Baruch Hu asked Rabbi Ishmael to bless him. And Rabbi Ishmael blessed him. He says, Yi ratzo milfanecha, shichbeshu rachamecha et ka'asecha, ve'yagolu rachamecha midotecha, ve'titnaeg im banecha kemidat harachamim. ותכניס להם מלפנים משורת הדין. Those tzaddikim died a horrific death. This is why Yosef, ויבק עליהם, עליהם עתידים להיות הרוגי מלכות. So we know that after all said and done, Pharaoh sends 10 carriages to bring Yaakov and his children. But the carriages were very small and had avodah zarah on them. The Gemara says that Yosef saw these carriages and he destroyed them and burned them and sent 10 of his own carriages that has the signs of marking of Judaism, Hebrew, letters of Hashem. And he says, bring everything with you. Bring your Torah, bring your family, bring your books, bring everything. Do not come to Egypt to assimilate. אל תתייוונו במצרים, אל תתערבבו, תהיו בגושן ותגידו להם שאתם רועי צאן. Of course, the Zohar says that when Yosef sent those 10 kirkarot, these 10 agalot, originally Yaakov was very fearful. And he says, I told Yosef about Agla Arufa when I left him, maybe he's about to, chaz v'chalila, kill me like Agla Arufa, because I sent him to Egypt to be sold. But really, Yosef answers, says, Ba'agala v'izman kariv v'imru amen. Those agalot is really in essence what we say in Kaddish. Ba'agala v'izman kariv. You know, those carriages, those marking of the Jewish people, They'll be the agala that will come b'viat HaMashiach. And of course, we know that he sent him Yain Yashan. The Baal HaTurim says, what Yain Yashan? Yain Yashan, Gematria 430. He says, don't worry, Abba, the Galut will end and we'll come back and we'll receive the Torah, Berechush Gadol, and we'll get to the land of Israel. That's why when Yaakov came down, he came as Yaakov and he left as Israel. וישלח את אחיו וילכו ואומר להם, אל תתרכזו בדרך. Yosef says, don't be upset. Don't be mad. Don't start fighting amongst yourself who's to blame and who's not. In essence, what he was saying to him, he says, you know, you are going into Galut. Could be 2,000 years. Don't be upset on the road. Have faith. Everything at the end will be fine. Don't fight. Don't argue. Don't do everything that you can in order to blame each other. Just come towards Hashem. And as we know, the Zohar says that when they got to the people, to the land of Israel, to the house of Yaakov, they sent the daughter of Asher named Serach. Serach, as we know, she's one of the 10 righteous people that never died, went to the heaven alive. And Serach came to Yaakov in order to sing to him and hint to him that Yosef is alive. Because, you know, the brothers were so afraid. Yaakov is 130 years old. If they told him Yosef is alive, he could have a heart attack and die. It's very interesting. You know, one of the 10 tzaddikim, Rabbi Hananiah ben Chinai, when he left his wife to study for 12 years, just like Rabbi Akiva did in the beginning, when he came home, he surprised her and she died from a heart attack. She hasn't seen him in 12 years. He opens the door. Hi, honey, I'm home. And his wife died from a heart attack. He prayed to Hashem and he did Chiyat HaMetim. He revived her and came back to life. And we know that Serach was singing to Yaakov, Od Yosef Chai. Just like Yosef said, Od Avi Chai, she did Od Yosef Chai, slowly, slowly. And Yaakov says, what are you saying? What's Od Yosef Chai? And in essence, she hinted to him that Yosef is not dead. And Yaakov blessed her, says, may your mouth will never know death. Shepich lo yida mavet. And Serach never died. By the way, Serach, she would also, 227 years from now, when the people of Israel would leave Egypt, Yaakov, as we know, will die. Everybody will die. Yosef will be buried in the Nile. The Egyptian wanted the Nile to be blessed. Nilus ze lo nes, היה לו nes, גם ליוסף וגם למשה. And every time Yosef came to the Nile, the water came up to him. So they buried him in a metal casket in the Nilus. And Serach came to Moshe. When everybody was dealing with Bizat Mitzrayim, Moshe went back to get Atzmot Yosef. And Serach revealed to him they are inside the Nile. And as we know, Moshe took a plaque and he wrote, Ale Shor Ale, and the casket of Yosef rose and he took his bones, Atzmot Yosef. The Zohar says the moment he took Atzmot Yosef, he had the highest level of Shekhinah, Shekhinat Yosef and Shekhinat Moshe. And he brought him with him. And by the way, Serach, later on, 400 years later, she would help David HaMelech too. Serach also, in the book of Shmuel Bet, she'll be helping David HaMelech. She would be 700 and some years old when she helps David, and she one of the 10 tzaddikim that went up to the heaven alive, like Eliyahu Navi and everything. So as we know, before Yaakov come down to Egypt, he goes to Beersheba. He sacrificed in the city of Abraham, city of Yitzchak, Zevach, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu come to him at night. And again, everything that HaKadosh promised him before, promised him again. He says, Al tira mireda Mitzrayim. He says, don't worry, going to Egypt, I'll make you goy gadol v'asimcha sham. Meaning that, I will put you there. Va'anochi yared imach Mitzrayim, va'ani ale gam alo v'Yosef yashit yado ala enecha. Hashem was revealing to Yaakov that he will die and Yosef will close his eyes. And as we know, when Yosef would die, when Yaakov would die, Yosef will be the one to close his eyes after the passing of Yaakov at 147 years old. When Yaakov come down to Egypt, וכל זרעו איתו, בניו ובני בניו איתו, בנותיו ובנות בניו. Everybody that came to Egypt, the 66 nefashot, they're all from Yaakov. Yaakov had daughters and son. As I mentioned, the Gemara says that every brother had a twin sister. And they married. Until Matan Torah, they could marry. Some say it was already, pre-announced at the Noahite laws. And the Torah says that Ve'ele Shemot Bnei Israel. Of course, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when you write the names, we have the 70 names, he blesses them. And the Torah says, Ve'et Yehuda shalach lefanav el Yosef lehorot lefanav Goshna. Yaakov sends Yehuda to build the yeshiva, lehorot, hora'ah. Where? In Goshen, Goshna. Hashem will go with them. Vayavohu arza Goshen. They come to the land of Israel. That's in Egypt, the land of Goshen. The Hagav, as we mentioned, the delta is about 240 kilometers square. It's from Port Said to Alexandria. This is really, they'll be the land of Israel. The entire Nilus, the water of the Nilus come from the highest lake in the world, Lake Victoria in Africa. It's actually longer, the Nilus is longer than the Amazonas. And it supplies tremendous amount of countries with water until today. So we know Yaakov and Yosef meet. Vayipol al tzavarav, vayivek al tzavarav, all the same thing. They're crying over the temples, the three temples, Shiloh, Bet HaMikdash HaRishon, Bet HaMikdash HaSheni. ויאמר ישראל אל יוסף, אמות הפעם אחרי ראותי את פניך, כי אותך חי. Yaakov is so happy. He says, I can die now. I'm perfect. I saw you. That's all I needed. Now, in essence, remember, in Parashat Vayeshev, it says, Yosef ben Sheva Esra Shana. So we know that Yaakov will spend 17 years with Yosef in Israel, since he was born from Lavan to Israel. And he will spend another 17 years with him in Egypt. Yosef, as we mentioned, 39. Yaakov is 130. He's coming now to Egypt. And he would die in Egypt 147. So the question is asked, why Yaakov did not live 180? So we know after all said and done, remember, Yosef is bringing his brothers and his father to the king of Egypt. And he introduced them. And remember, he said to them, don't tell them that you're nothing but shepherd. And all you've done is you've been shepherd. Abraham was a shepherd. Yitzhak was a shepherd. Yaakov was a shepherd. Say the same thing so you don't go to war, so you don't be the generals in his military. Because, the Egyptians were very short and ugly. The Gemara says, if I'm not mistaken, Moed Katan, that Paro was Ama V'chetzi, Gamad, black, and 60 centimeter, short. And the brothers were tall and strong. Yaakov, remember, he can move a stone that takes 50 people to move. When he met Rachel in the Be'er, unlike today we meet the wives in the bar, same letters, Be'er and bar. This is Torah, this is alcohol. And we see Yaakov was very strong. His sons were same thing, very strong. And Yosef says to them that you're only a shepherd. Don't mix with the goyim. And now, as we go to our question, why Yaakov only lived 147 and not 180? So when Paro met Yaakov, Vayomer Paro el Yaakov, Kama yemei shenei chayecha? Paro, the first question, instead of saying, welcome, thank you for Yosef, he's amazing, your son is unbelievable, wow, what a great son you've done. Pharaoh says, how old are you? The Torah says, Shenei chayecha, to your life. The Zohar says that, because Pharaoh was so short, He did on purpose that every time somebody came to see him, he built a very short door, and everybody has to bow to him, crawl to come and see him. But when Abraham came down to Egypt with Sarah, their door rose up, the mashkof went up. Abraham walked in standing. The same thing happened with Yaakov. When Yaakov started walking towards Pharaoh, the door rose, the mashkof rose. And Pharaoh thought it was Abraham first. He says, how? Your two lives? You're still alive from the life before and this life? And Yaakov, Vayomer Yaakov el Paro, Yemei Shene Megurai 30 u'me'at shana me'at v'ra'im. So Yaakov now is actually complained to Pharaoh about his life, and he uses 33 words. And those 33 words, HaKadosh Baruch Hu punished him to lose 33 years of his life. In essence, Hashem says, how can you complain to Pharaoh? Everything I've done for you. From the moment Esav wanted to kill you since you was a kid, through Lavan, through all your wives, through Betuel, through Esav, I've done so much for you, and you complaining to Pharaoh? Yaakov lost 33 years. 180 minus 33, 147. And as we know, and I'll finish with that, forgive me going a little bit over the 1 hour. And Yosef basically says to them, remember, remain in Goshen. Do not mix with the people. Do not become Egyptian. And after all said and done, by the way, Yosef is instituting a 20% tax bracket to be paid. Lechomesh, it says, Al Mitzrayim, רק אדמת הכהנים לבדם לא הייתה לפרעה. Yosef basically tell all the, those politicians, Admat HaKohanim, those are the politicians of Egypt. He says, you don't have to pay taxes. And that's how the corruptions in politics began. Because, when they don't have to pay taxes, they don't care charging other and spending other people money. Politicians today, as we know, especially in America, they come in, salary of 180, they leave millionaires after 4 years. All of them except one, Trump. And very interesting, Trump in 2017 instituted on Parashat, Vigash, 20% tax bracket for America. He reduced this from 38%. This is exactly on the same parasha. Yosef basically instituted 20% tax, and he says to the so-called politician, you don't have to pay, in order so they don't really, chaz v'chalila, go against the children of Israel. וישב ישראל בארץ מצרים בארץ גושן, ויאחזו בה, ויפרו, וירבו מאוד. So we see really here is going to be very much the beginning of exile in the next parasha, the last parasha of Bereshit. I thank you so much for being with us. Again, thank you to Partners in Torah for their sponsorship and for all they do, Mr. and Mrs. Selwyn Isaac. Thank you to all of you. Please help us share the class with everybody. Our goal is to reach 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, so we appreciate your help. And again, I'm Rabbi Dahan, Kolel Avat Israel, on behalf of Partners in Torah, wishing you a wonderful week. Join us tomorrow and the days after. We have several classes. And Baruch Hashem, I want to thank you all. Have a wonderful rest of the week. And Be'ezat Hashem, this Friday, hopefully we don't have to fast. Mashiach will come before. 10th of Tevet is the fast, the only fast we are allowed to fast on Shabbat. And it will start in the morning at 4:30, and it will go up to 5:30 in the evening into Shabbat. And we open the fast on Shabbat. But hopefully, like I mentioned, Be'ezat Hashem, we don't have to fast. So have a wonderful rest of the week. Thank you so much. I'm Rabbi Dahan. Appreciate it. We'll see you again soon.